Welcome to the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and today we will be going over the Week 9 running back rankings. Just a heads up, I don't often say this, but I do work as a base from half PPR points. You will see my top 31 running backs in this video. However, I do have some, 60, 70, maybe more, but probably around there, ranked this week. You can find them all up on the website, www.thefforge.com. You can also see the projections like you will be seeing in this video for all of the players. This is an expected range, not just a single numbered projection. And of course, we have my heating gauge over here. Red is good in this video, blue is bad, white is neutral in terms of the points here compared to other players, as well as this matchup gauge over on to the left of the players' names. Before we get into the rankings, one other note, I will be live tonight, a half hour or so prior to kickoff for the Thursday night game. Then I will be live, same thing, 45 minutes, half hour prior to the morning game in Germany on Sunday. And then, as always, 1.5 hours prior to the main slate of games. Also, I can answer your start-sit questions. You can see my most recent up-to-date rankings, and of course, they're always updated on the website as well when I update them. Now, let's quick recap my Week 8 suggestions for daily fantasy football, as well as how I did with my love-ems and my fade-ems. First up, for the daily fantasy football, I said that you should be willing to pay for Alvin Kamara at $7,300. It seemed like the highest and best deal available is what I said, and he finished as the running back 4. Then for a good price, Breece Hall at $5,900, I said I'm loving it. He finished as the running back 7, so solid start there. Then for a long shot, I gave you Devin Singletary at $4,400 versus Carolina. It was worth a shot. It did not work out. Then for my fade-ems, I gave you both of the running backs from Tennessee. Gave you Derrick Henry as a fade, and for a love, I gave you Tyjae Spears. I think I just misworded that, but you get the idea here. Give you both of those Tennessee Titans running backs as a fade-em, and I love them, and I got them wrong. Derrick Henry did have a good day, running back 13 on the week, and Tyjae Spears finished as running back 43. That game just did not go the way that I expected it to go, which is fine. Then for my other fade, I gave you Brian Robinson. He finished as the running back 24, so I think that pretty much was correct for where I faded and where I had him ranked. And for my other love him, I gave you Rachaad White, and he came through for me with a running back 11 finish. So all in all, not too shabby with the running backs, maybe a little bit more on the good side there last week. Let's move on to my Week 9 rankings and try to do even a little bit better. Welcome back, and I have just revealed my top 15 running backs. This is my first tier, a big first tier. I don't usually have tiers this big, but these are my must starts. If you have these guys, you are starting them. I rank them like so. You're free to feel differently. If you happen to have 3 of these guys, first of all, most likely I would suggest putting that other guy in as your flex, but maybe not. Maybe you're also stacked at wide receiver. That can happen. So if you do have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. I always try to get answers to people, and I try to give some sort of explanation for those answers as well. So you can ask any questions that you may have, but this is the order I like them. Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Austin Eckler, Breece Hall, DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Raheem Mostert, Isaiah Pacheco, Bijan Robinson, Kenneth Walker. I will say Isaiah Pacheco, Bijan, really, really close there. Just like the upside there against Miami, a little bit for Isaiah. Bijan Robinson going against Minnesota, not a great matchup. But Kenneth Walker, after that at running back 12, followed by Joe Mixon, Tony Pollard, James Cook at running back 15. Let's move on to my second tier, the meat and potatoes of this video. Looks like I forgot to resize my image over here and everything above me to be centered with the size of this graph compared to the one from my quarterbacks video. We're just going to have to live with that. Hopefully nobody has OCD out there. But let's start off here with my running back 16 in Jerome Ford. And last week was an odd week for the Cleveland running backs. On the first carry of the game, Kareem Hunt took it. Then on the third play of the game, so 2 plays later, Jerome Ford carried the ball. He did not touch the ball again until for the entirety of the first half, and actually until late third quarter. Hunt took the first 2 drives in that third quarter, and then he never saw the ball again. Ford played as the running back 1 from that point forward. And to me, at first, I kind of thought that maybe at like halftime, on that first carry, Jerome Ford maybe tweaked something. He came into the game just barely. He was a game-time decision. And then he gets that first carry. We don't see him again until much, much later in the game. So I'm thinking maybe he tweaked something, and at halftime he gave him the green light, or maybe even after halftime. But the switchover didn't happen like right after half, which makes me also wonder, maybe Kareem Hunt did something in order to draw the ire of the coaching staff, and then they turned to a not 100% Jerome Ford from that point forward. Is that possible? I really don't know. Throughout all of this, Pierre Strong played as the second fiddle to both of them while they were the de facto RB1s. So personally, I'm expecting things to go back to Jerome Ford as the RB1, expecting his health to have improved over the past week since he was already good to go last week. And Arizona is one excellent matchup. There is some risk that this is just a crowded backfield. What we saw last week is something that we're going to see going forward. If we did not have that risk, I would have Jerome Ford as in that first tier. So I really think a lot of him. I think he's a strong start this week. Hopefully, the weirdness doesn't catch you if you start him off guard there. At running back 17, I have Rachaad White. He's been doing his thing for a couple of weeks now. It was always his receiving work that was giving him, and the expectation was for that to be most of his fantasy value. Houston isn't anything to shy away from as an opponent. They're not a great matchup, however. So I like Rachaad White just fine this week, and hopefully he can continue things going forward. At running back 18, I have Darrell Henderson, and Green Bay absolutely stinks against the run. But I wonder if this isn't more of a matchup that favors Royce Newman and how he runs the ball, one that he could take advantage of more. Regardless, it's Darrell Henderson so far who has been producing for fantasy in what's been a very split backfield between the two of them, pretty much right down the middle. So I am fading Darrell Henderson, but I have to say, basically, I love all the first tier guys. I'm fading all the third tier guys, and these second tier guys are, I'm playing in this order. It's really what it comes down to. It wasn't easy for me to determine who I was fading, who I was loving this week for the running backs, but I do have that little bit of concern for Darrell Henderson. So if you feel the same way, maybe you try to start somebody else over him in hopes that, I guess in hopes that Darrell Henderson has a bust day and you make the right choice. But with how he's been doing, it's going to be a little bit hard to sit him for a lot of people. Then Ramondre Stevenson I have at running back 19 going up against the Washington Commanders, and hopefully, because they just sold two of some premier, essentially, pass rushers in the league, don't have them on their team anymore. Maybe that will help this offense and, the New England offense against them, and in turn, maybe that will help Ramondre Stevenson to do something. With how much he touches the ball and everything, you have to start him, unfortunately, at a certain point. He's been underproducing, and just hope that he'll overproduce or at least just give you a solid game each week. That's the hope. Rarely happens. On to running back 20, I have Zach Moss, and the snap share for him dipped below 40% for the first time. Might go down a little bit more, but I think he'll get a good amount of carries in this game because I really expect Indianapolis to dominate the ground against Carolina. Worst rushing defense in the league. And ultimately, even moving forward on the season, he's been too good, in my opinion, for them to just completely make him disappear. I think that they'll have him involved for the rest of the season, and this is one of the matchups where I'm going to trust even a 35% workload from Zach Moss because I think that'll still be 10 plus-ish carries, 10 carries, and once again, in a really, really good matchup. And hopefully he can just fall into the end zone after Jonathan Taylor gets a little bit tired. That always helps. Then at running back 21, we have Brian Robinson, and it's not the worst matchup. At some point, you just have to start him. And for me, that's going to be at running back 20. I wrote 22, but at running back 21 this week. At running back 22, I have Chuba Hubbard, who I didn't write anything about. Going up against Indianapolis, I thought they were a better run defense. It's actually a pretty darn good matchup. And as you can see from the projections really like him. I did boost him up a little bit to represent how much he was used last week. So there is this risk that maybe last week was a mirage. Miles Sanders comes in, he plays more at the very least. But Chuba didn't do a whole lot with what he was given. This is why I didn't like Chuba a whole lot. All things considered, I think he's a pretty good start. There's just some risks to it, and can he actually take advantage of a good matchup? I don't know. Then at running back 23, we have Gus Edwards going up against Seattle, and Seattle is on the poor side of being an average matchup for running backs. I said last week that Gus Edwards' main value going forward was his touchdown upside. He had started to get that red zone work, goal line work, and he'd be a touchdown-based kind of dependent running back, not his receiving work, his 80-yard receiving work specifically from 2 weeks ago that would give him his value most weeks. And I think that held true last week, but he did get 3 touchdowns last weekend. He is still in a true split with Justice Hill. The thing is, it's really not that hard to imagine that Baltimore gets into the red zone, gets near the goal line a bunch of times this game against Seattle, and in those events, there's a very good chance that Gus Edwards could get a touchdown this week, and that is why he is a love 'em for me. Then at running back 24, we have Aaron Jones, and I wish I could give you a good reason to start Aaron Jones, and outside of what he showed us in week 1 and his career up until this point in his career, I got nothing for you. So he is going to be a fade. This was probably the easiest one for me, but at some point, you just got to hope that things turn around a little bit and you get a good game out of him. It's possible. It's definitely possible. And that's going to bring us to running back 25 with Kareem Hunt, who the projections really don't like at all. I don't have a clue as to why the projections are so low on him. I feel like that's lower than last week, and he got a touchdown last week, did okay. But it's an excellent matchup going up against Arizona. One would think that he's still going to get work in this offense. There should be enough room for himself and Jerome Ford to produce, and it's possible that it's a true split between the two of them or something like that going forward, or something like we saw last weekend going forward. Any of those events in this matchup, I'll take Kareem Hunt over some guys, and let's look at who those names are. And those are my final 6 running backs of the video. My third tier, and we're just going to call this the bad matchup starters tier. None of them are in good matchups, all very poor matchups for these running backs. And there are a lot of reasons to be concerned about each of them being able to produce in a poor matchup. Aaron Jones was hanging on by a thread to not be in this tier, and as I talked about his talent level and his history as a talented running back, that's the only reason he didn't fall into this tier. But yeah, at running back 26, I have Alexander Mattison, followed by Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, Dameon Pierce, Deonta Foreman, and Amari DeMarcado. All guys who I'm not expecting big weeks from, but it's possible. Let's move on to my DFS buys. You remember my first tier, my 15 running backs. I really don't think that you need to pay up for one of those top 5, 6 running backs this week. So I'm going to give you 2 guys who I think are fairly priced. And that's going to be 6,600 DK bucks for Jonathan Taylor and then 6,300 for Breece Hall. Both significantly cheaper than where I have them ranked. And I understand based on what they've done so far on this season why they are at that cost, but I am high up on them. And then I'm going to give you 2 big tournament long shot kind of guys as well. So the first one that I'm going to give you is Royce Freeman. And I just kind of talked about that with Darrell Henderson, how I thought that maybe this is a matchup that fits Royce Freeman's running style a little bit better for him to take advantage of. And they are pretty much splitting the work. It's just been Darrell Henderson who's gotten the fantasy points up to this point. It could be a week where we see that flip. And in that event, maybe Royce Freeman has a big week at $4,600. Then the other one is going to be Roschon Johnson at $4,500, and I think that he might be worth taking a swing at. That's all it is you're taking a swing. New Orleans, their opponent, is good against the run, so it's possible that they'd game plan around that with the screen game, which would be, I suspect, Roschon's job in that event. In addition, after a prolonged absence, Roschon came right back into basically the role that he had prior to getting injured while Khalil Herbert was healthy, and he came back to it in full force. And more interestingly, Deonta Foreman, who just had a big week prior to that, saw his role decrease significantly with both Darrington Evans and Blasingame getting good shares of the work, like some 20% plus of the work, maybe near a quarter of the work, each of them, as far as snap shares being on the field. So it could make sense to unleash the rookie this week. Maybe they were holding him back a little bit because he had been out of it for so long, and just see what you have in him, because seemingly they weren't happy with something about Deonta Foreman and what he was providing them, apparently. So that is it for this video. I hope you guys have a good Thursday night. Hope everything goes well for you, or, bad for your opponent. And the tight ends video comes out tomorrow. I think I made all the other announcements. So yeah, peace out. Have a good one.